Welcome to Finding Family DNA, the show about finding and connecting birth families with LA Morning News anchor Chris Schaubel and Jay Rosenzweig, founder and CEO of birthparentfinder.com. And now, here's Chris and Jay.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to Finding Family DNA with Chris and Jay. I'm Chris Schaubel, local news anchor, but as it pertains to this show, here's all you need to know. I'm adopted, and Jay and his company helped me find both sides of my birth family.
And I'm Jay Rosenzweig, founder and CEO of birthparentfinder.com, and this is our third show, Chris.
Man, I love it. I love the difference we're making.
It's great. Last week, we had a really compelling story, and we're going to, not stray from that, we're going to bring in another one today, another crazy one.
I'm a news guy. Let's hit him with the headline. Guy comes to you to find his birth father's side of the family. Turns out the guy is a Chippendales dancer. How do you like produce? How do you like them apples, right? So I just can't wait to see how we get from contacting you to learning the guy's a former. He doesn't do it anymore, but a former Chippendales dancer. So his name is Sean Higgins. Tell me about Sean Higgins.
Sean is now 30 years old, and he took a 23andMe test back in 2017, and he saw Italian side on his family and didn't really make a big deal out of it. And by the way, Sean has a wonderful relationship with his father.
Great.
Wonderful. And didn't really think about anything. His father's his father. Everything's good. But then his brother takes a 23andMe test. This was last year.
Right.
And it shows that they're half siblings.
Oops. Yeah.
And then that's when Sean decided to take this further.
Right.
And by the way, Sean does live about an hour north of Napa, and he was born in Sonoma County.
And he's roughly 30 years old.
Yes.
And he contacts you. And first thing you say, and I find this fascinating because I think the perception out there is that all DNA sites are the same. They're not.
No, they're not. And probably should have taken an Ancestry.com.
Which is what you had him do.
Right. Eventually, because we couldn't solve this case with 23andMe. It was too difficult, too many non-paternal events.
Right.
We've discussed this before.
Right.
And it's just, and Misty and I, and she'll come on later, and decided, let him take an Ancestry.com test. Who's going to show up? And sure enough, somebody showed up, and we were able to solve this case.
Okay, so who showed up? What was the key person that showed up that didn't show up in the 23andMe test that showed up in the Ancestry.com?
This was
DNA.
I believe it was a great aunt.
Okay.
And she had a family tree.
Oh.
And with Misty's help, she was able to figure out who Sean's grandmother.
And I'm going to, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to paint this in a very simple way. His father and mother were having trouble at the time.
Correct.
And so she, had some space, connected with this Chippendales dancer. And, lo and behold, Sean's born.
Exactly. And the Chippendales dancer had no idea that he fathered this child.
So he went through this whole life not knowing he had a son out there.
Yes, no clue whatsoever. I mean, we're talking about a weekend up in Northern California, and he disappeared, and that was that.
Wow. All right. You had the opportunity via Zoom to connect Sean, his brother, and actually, is this the clip? No, this is the clip with Shawn Michael, the Chippendale dancer, right?
Right.
Right. And you, when you connected all three of them. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
At what point did your father know that you weren't his birth child?
So he had suspicions. I think they were having like turbulent times around the time I was conceived. And then, I think he kind of just put it to rest. He just was like, well, this is my kid. And then when, like I said, my brother took, so I took a DNA test a long time ago, and then no one else in my family did. And then my brother did, I think in like June of last year, June, July. And then that's when we found out because it showed up. So
how long ago did you do your test?
Like 2017, long time ago.
So you knew before anybody.
I didn't know. I didn't like put two and two together. I saw like a lot of my mom's maiden name, like House and a couple others. And then I saw Conti popping up and like a couple other names. And I was like, and I'd ask my dad, I'm like, who are these people? I don't know. I'm like, does this sound familiar to you? He's like, no, it doesn't sound familiar. And we just never pieced it together. and until my brother got his, and then it was like, oh, okay. It kind of made it clear.
So there we just heard Sean talking about what wasn't adding up and why, it was time to figure out what's really going on with my family. Is that like an innate sense that you've gathered over the years with your clients? Something ain't right. I mean, I'm not crazy. Something ain't right.
Right. And they want to know. I mean, with Sean, it's not like he didn't have a relationship with his father. Obviously he did, a great one, but there's something there that you have to know. What is your family history? What is your medical history? And he doesn't know that on the paternal side. So this is good.
Yeah. Yeah. And then is that a common thread with your clients? Like a light bulb goes off and sometimes they don't look like either parent and that's a tell, or although genetic, variances happen every day in real life. So not looking like your parents isn't necessarily, a red flag, but for a lot of people, it's not just that, it's other stuff, right?
And I'm glad that Sean did this at a young age.
Right.
Not when he's in his 50s and 60s. And we get a lot of those. But good for Sean to decide to do this when he's still young, before he has a family even.
Right. And I know also when you did your Zoom interview with Sean and Mike, that you asked them, what do you make of this? And how has this impacted you? Learning of each other. And we have that clip as well.
This whole experience, Sean, how does this whole thing make you feel?
I mean, I found out at 30, so I was able to rationalize it, finding out pretty well. I'm glad I didn't know about it as a kid, but it was just a shock really at first. And then, now it's good to just have answers, have the truth. So.
And how about you, Mike?
I was blown away. I've been blown away because, like I told you, my head was in a whole different place when you called me up. I was like, oh, somebody actually found some more information on my parents, and all of a sudden you hit me with the hard punch across the head with, you have a son possibly. And I was like, what? I do? And I started going back in my head, okay, what's going on here? And then when you pretty much laid it out for me, it was basically looking at a spider web of people in this family, people that I don't even know, and then opened up a lot of more questions for Sean. I'm sure he has more questions about his ancestry now.
So obviously it's a blessing for both of them. This is something that's added joy to their lives.
It is, because a lot of times the birth father wants nothing to do with it. He goes, why are you contacting me? Why do you need this now for? And this guy, Michael Clark, is awesome. He just so warm, so welcoming, and it's a great thing that they had this initial conversation.
I couldn't agree more. That was my experience when I went through this process. And we're going to talk to Sean Higgins right after this break.
This is Jay Rosenzweig, the founder and CEO of BirthParentFinder.com. If you're looking to find your birth parents or anyone in your birth family, give us a call at 866-572-3463 or go to our website, BirthParentFinder.com. Welcome back to Finding Family DNA with Chris and Jay. And now it's time we bring in Sean Higgins to talk about his journey to find his birth father. Sean, I'm going to start right off that bat by asking you, what prompted you at this stage to go ahead, hire a company like mine, to go ahead and search for your birth father?
Funny story. I grew up normal. Everything's good. Just this last 6 months ago, my brother does a DNA test. It comes up as my half brother. And so all of a sudden, I'm 30 years old. I have a lot of questions. And I kind of had an idea when we looked in his background, and I saw, my father's, last name, and then mine had a bunch of different last names. And I'm like, well, now I have questions. So I tried to do my own research, and I'm not as good as you are. So I found you, and I'm like, you know what, let's see what I can get going. And, you did a great job.
How cool is it that your dad was a Chippendale dancer? I'm going to get to the point. If some people find out your dad was this, your dad was that. Your dad's a stud. Your dad's a stud. I think it's a cool thing.
Yeah. So definitely, it's actually funny. So, my dad, the guy that raised me, he actually did strip for a little bit as well.
Wow.
Right.
I was
Wow.
raised
It's in your
by a-
genes, man.
Yeah,
Literally.
literally. So it's funny. Yeah. My birth father and the man that raised me both, at one point danced. So, I feel like I don't know if I got it in me.
That is so funny, though.
But can you dance?
With some tequila.
Yeah, there you go. I like your style. All right, Sean, let me ask you some of these questions that I always like to really get to with the people that we speak with. You finding out that your birth father was A, still alive, B, just a little bit about him, and then C, wanted to talk to you, wanted to get to know you. Like, can you kind of express what that meant to you?
Well, I think, to start off, I was just, I had a lot of questions, and finding out he was adopted, I was like, wow, now we're really going to have a lot of questions. Mainly it was, my concern was medical stuff. I was like, I need to know if there's anything going on in our medical history. But yeah, he's alive. That's great. I'll take that. And then the fact that, yeah, he was, really approachable, down to earth, just open to communicating. I couldn't have asked for a better experience. But yeah, I tempered a lot of like your hopes, as well as, possible, like, oh, is this guy a criminal? Or, I kind of went through all those different, thoughts. And yeah, I'm really happy it was on the more positive end of that, for sure.
And Sean, I vet birth fathers before I connect them with my clients. And just by talking to Michael, he's a cool guy. I hope you got that
Definitely.
same impression.
Yeah, we're still talking, and yeah, I totally enjoy talking to him. He's a great guy, for sure.
Have you had a chance I know you've Zoomed with him. Have you actually had a chance to meet him in person?
No, I haven't. So it's funny. I'm in California currently, but just in 2023, I left Arizona, which is where he was at.
Oh,
and we were not maybe an hour away.
Wow.
So yeah, it's funny. Life is funny that way.
Man, what are the
That
chances?
happens.
Yeah.
It happens a lot.
I mean, just what are the chances? So if you had to describe just the feel of it now, like do you feel like, okay, I found out what I needed to find out, whatever that medically might be, and I'm at peace with whatever happens now? Is that how you feel? I don't want to put words in your mouth. What is your goal going forward?
I think you summarized it really well. I had a lot of questions, and I knew that I was going to regret not finding out. I would have regret more, just being in the dark about it. So I'm really happy I went through with this. And going forward, I think, at least with him and I, we'll probably stay in contact. But for myself, I'm very much at peace. I'm very lucky that I found out the way I did, and I have the family that I have. Yeah, I think everything happened as best as it could have happened.
Very well said.
And Sean, is there any animosity toward your mother?
No, for what happened, not at all. We're all human. I can't judge her for that. I've made my mistakes in life. Yeah, no, none for that.
I love that.
And I did have the opportunity to speak with your mother, and you told me she won't talk to you. She won't talk to you. Is that right?
Yeah. Just between her and I, we don't have the best relationship. So in my head, I guess I projected that. I was like, she's not going to talk to you. But
I'm glad she was a factor a little bit in solving this case. And you look very happy, I must say.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that, I again, like, just thinking about it all, I have the answers to a lot of the questions I have. And then to ultimately, from the time I initially found out until now, I've been able to think about it, and I've come to peace with it all. So
real quick, before we let you go, Sean, how is your relationship? I'm going to call him your dad, because when someone raises you, they're your dad, whether it's through DNA or not, they're your dad. How's your relationship with your dad now that you found your biological father? Is he like, I'm happy for you? What is that? How is that blossomed, changed at all, not changed at all, that relationship?
So from the beginning, it was kind of funny. We found out my brother called me and my dad over and into his house and was just like, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off. One of us isn't your son. But initially I felt like sorry for him. And it was funny because that was my kind of gut reaction, was feeling bad for him. And he looks over at me and he's like, I'm really sorry. Like, I feel bad for you for going through this. And I'm like, you took the words and thoughts out of my head. But our relationship, he's my best friend. He raised me. Any good attribute I have, I attribute it to him. He's an excellent person through and through. Like, I'm beyond lucky to have been his son.
Man,
that's the way it should be.
Yeah. And if you haven't heard this phrase yet, you're going to hear it a million times. You were born in his heart. So one mother might be your birth mother, but the other mother, you were born in their heart. And that's the way it is.
And one last thing, Sean, I know Michael, your birth father, said he was going to take an ancestry DNA test just to be 100% sure. We are 100% sure.
I was going to say, at this point, that would be an even bigger story.
That would be the icing on the cake, but we know that he's your birth father.
Yeah, I think through some of the details we've come to find, I don't have any doubts about it.
Yeah.
So I like the icing on the cake. Take the DNA test. Sure, I like being.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Sean, thank you so much for joining us. You've been a great guest, and we love telling your story. And I just think it's, of all the things your dad could have been, a former Chippendales dancer is pretty darn cool in my book. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right, you're watching Finding Family DNA with Chris and Jay, and we'll be right back. Family Tree Magazine provides information, inspiration, and community for those who want to discover, preserve, and celebrate their roots. Family Tree Magazine covers all areas of potential interest to family history enthusiasts, reaching beyond strict genealogy research to include ethnic heritage, DNA testing, family reunions, oral history, archival preservation, historic travel, and other surprises along the way. Family Tree Magazine provides engaging, easy-to-understand instructions to help genealogy enthusiasts research their past. Whether you're a beginner or a professional, there's something for everyone.
Welcome back to Finding Family DNA with Chris and Jay. You just heard from Sean. What a wild and crazy story. I am so happy for Sean. But now we're going to bring in Misty Gillis, who's our genealogist extraordinaire, to talk about how we solved this case using Ancestry DNA. Misty, can you explain that to us?
Yeah, of course. So we had Sean. Sean had come to us, of course, and taken the 23andMe test at first. And I remember you had come to me and you said you had looked at his results and he had a couple first cousins once removed, and it had led to this Conti family, Conti. And you had said to me, I'm pretty sure that his grandfather is a man named Dino Conti. And so I looked over the results and I agreed with your assumption that it was Dino Conti. So we had one half of the puzzle. But one thing we couldn't figure out was who the grandmother was in this equation. So you had Sean take an ancestry DNA test. And one of his top matches that popped up on his paternal side was a woman that was unrelated to the Conti family. And it turns out she was related to this Howard family. And she had a family tree built out attached to her test. So I was able to look at her matches in common with and determine who in the Howard family was the biological grandmother of Sean Higgins. And armed with that knowledge, I turned it back over to you to see what you could investigate.
And I couldn't have done this without you.
Thank you.
And we have the access to the California the matching birth index. And this birth index, we were able to figure out who this person was. I took it on a whim to look up Conti and Howard in this birth index. And sure enough, that's how we found Sean's birth father, Michael Clark, because Richard Conti was the name that we found. We didn't know if he's adopted, born in 1966. And I said, wouldn't it be something if Richard Conti was indeed Sean's father? And the matching index showed Michael Clark, if that makes sense. Michael Clark and Richard Conti are the same person, and that person was adopted.
And that was based on a birth date.
It was based on a birth date.
And the fact that he was adopted and his name had changed.
Correct.
So that's what I want the folks at home to understand is that you had a name, but then you had a different name. But when you took the DNA and the birth index information that you have proprietary with birthparentfinder.com, you then could say, even though this kid's name has changed, he was born on this date to this mother, so that has to be the right kid.
It has to be 100% because that's what the state does.
Right.
And under the name Richard Conte, there's an asterisk, and that means it's an adoption. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is the right guy. We didn't even think so, Misty, did we? At first, it was just on a whim.
No, at first we were just kind of like, oh, okay, that's cool.
and then I call the guy. I find the guy. Obviously I call him and I go, "Were you the Chippendales dancer?" And he goes, "Yes, that's me." And it's like, and then I call Misty and they go, "You're not going to believe this." So
you figured out he was a Chippendales dancer before you figured out if he was the father to Sean?
No, the birth mother said she believed.
Oh, okay.
But when I talked to the birth mother, she actually said he was a dancer, a male stripper, basically. And I figured.
So you did find out he was a Chippendales dancer,
but I wasn't sure she was telling me the truth. So I
that's not something you lie about, man.
Yeah,
you don't go throwing that around. You don't go throwing around. I think he may have. Oh, by the way, he was a Chippendales dancer.
Oh, and by the way, she never told Sean that. She didn't tell Sean that because she felt ashamed, but she told me that. Go figure.
Well, people, how people can be. They can be sometimes more open. She may have felt, like you said, a bit of guilt about it. Misty, one of the questions I have for you, and I think you guys are doing a really good job of keeping it relatively simple for people to understand, but would you say there was just an explosion of possibilities because there were multiple, so you get your DNA back, but then you realize that there were a lot of adoptions within the structure of the family, and that can throw off the DNA chain?
So there was a couple complications because when we looked at the Conti side on 23andMe, there were two gentlemen who were descendants of Dino Conti, but were also adopted out. And I think one of them was his son and one was a grandson.
Okay, and real quick, the name Conti, that would be the paternal or front. I get them all mixed up. What side of the family and what great grand person help me explain.
The paternal side's grandfather.
Gotcha. So his biological father's grandfather.
Yep.
Gotcha.
And that's how we solved the case, basically.
Yeah, exactly. We looked at the descendants of him and looked at and analyzed the DNA amounts and determined that they're all descended from Dino Conti, so Sean must be descended from Dino as well. And that's how we were able to peg him as the grandfather. What we didn't know was who's the grandmother in this equation. It's clear that Dino's a rolling stone. He's got descendants that are adopted out. He's got other kids, but we had to really tie in that grandmother piece. And that's where Ancestry kind of came in.
Right. And we knew more about Dino Conti's history than anything because the roadmap for him started in Baltimore, ended up in California, and then Las Vegas. And you didn't know this, but the Dino Conti was a mob boss.
Wow.
Yeah, he got around.
If you Googled stuff, you'd find that name?
I contacted some people in the family, and they said he was a heavy in Las Vegas.
Well, we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you know what? It's back in the day, whatever, and this guy got around. He allegedly fathered at least 6 kids out of wedlock.
Yep.
Yeah, and we just, like I said, we knew more about that guy than anyone before Sean took that ancestry test. And Misty, we talked about this, and where does this one rank as amongst our most difficult cases?
Okay, so this ranks up there in the most difficult, but it also ranks in the most accomplishment I felt from a case, because the way that we worked together and the way using that proprietary database, I don't think anybody else would have been able to solve this case. I mean, we identified the grandfather, we identified the grandmother, and then we got verbal confirmation too, Chris. So we spoke to the grandmother, and she confirmed that, yes, I did give a child up for adoption. That was a son of Dino's.
And that was Michael Clark.
Right. And we have all this background confirmation. And I really don't think that any other team, not to sound cocky, but.
No, sound cocky. You earned it.
And that work, it's up there in the top probably 5 cases I've ever worked.
Bravo, you two.
It's an accomplishment. It's rewarding. But what we didn't say was that this grandmother is in a nursing home with dementia.
But she remembered that.
She remembered that. She just remembered that.
Long-term stuff. My mom has dementia, so they can remember certain things quite well.
It's short-term. That's the issue. Yeah.
Exactly.
And Michael Clark is going to somehow make it up. He lives in Oregon. Michael Clark is going to somehow make it up to Oregon and visit his birth mother. Bless their hearts.
Yeah.
I mean,
All right.
Oh.
That's beautiful,
Yeah.
but now you're getting into the weeds again.
Hey, it's like
stay out of the weeds. Stay out of the weeds. All right. Thank you so much, Misty. As always, you're the best genealogist going. Without you, birthparentfinder.com doesn't fly. And we want to thank you for watching. We have so many more episodes coming up with so many other great stories. But for a little bit more on this, some more details of the how and why this all came together, please go to our Patreon channel, patreon.com/findingfamilydna. And there's a little bit extra we have on there for you. Misty, again, thank you. Thank you for watching Finding Family DNA with Chris and Jay.
Again, thank you, Chris. Great episode.
All right. See you next time.
If you want exclusive bonus segments of these episodes, join our Patreon at patreon.com/findingfamilydna. And if you are looking to start the journey of finding your family DNA, just go to birthparentfinder.com. Thank you for joining us on Finding Family DNA.